Molly, Maxwell, and was it Crabtree? Well, you just hold this, or you tell about her.
Well, Molly was our washwoman, and she would come every week, and she'd bring all the way from 2 to 3 with her to kind of do the chores around. So one day she was washing, and George did something that didn't suit, so she grabbed up a wet towel and struck him in the side of the head and said, "Well, you bastard, I'll kill you." And Lucy says, "Why, Molly, what do you mean by calling him a bastard?" She says, "Well, my Lord, I've had 21 and nary one but the same man." And she says, "Lucy, how many have you had?" She said, "Well, I just had 2. But she says, I'm going back to the hospital and have some repair work done." She said, "Repair work? What do you mean?" She said, "Well, I was torn when the last one was born, and I'm going to go and have it fixed." She says, "My God Almighty, you've been using insurgencies." She says, "I've had 21 and not a thing in airy hole."
Well, did Molly ever tell any other good stories like that?
No, I can't remember too many. Oh, she'd tell them every week, you know. This wasn't a story. This was a true story.
Oh, yeah, that's what I mean, but you didn't have any more things.
Oh, no.
Bess, do you remember about Eule? Can you tell us something about Eule, your cousin?
Yes.
Well, tell us something about Eule.
Well, Eule was a sister. I mean, no, that's Eule
Was your cousin?
was our cousin, and Uncle Ike was her father. All right.
Well, tell about Eule.
You know about some of the things, how funny she was.
I know it. So she came by Crane one day and asked my sister Lucy to come to Galena with her, that she was going to come down to see us and would like for her to come. So Lucy never said no but once in her life, she said, and then she didn't understand what the feller said to her. But she got in the car with her. She got in the car with Sue, and she started out, and there wasn't a tip in the glove fingers that she had on during her driving. And she says, "Whoop, whoop." Says, "We've got to pay somebody. I think I have to put my hand out." And she rammed her hand out like that, you know, to take, and says, "No, I guess he didn't mean for us to stop." So he didn't. But anyhow, they came on, and, oh, I can't remember.
Well, can you tell something about her makeup?
Oh,
That's one
yes.
thing I remember.
Well, so...
Her hair dye was made.
Well, there.
She boiled the green walnuts to get the juice out to dye her hair with.
What color did it turn out?
Well, between red and green. And she went to St. Louis to an Eastern Star meeting with Ms. Marshall. And Ms. Marshall says, "Don't get your makeup kit out, Eule. Here's mine. Just use mine." She says, "I used my own preparation." She took an old rose leaf off of a petal off of an artificial rose, licked it, and put her jaw paint on. And she had some sort of powder mixed up, borax and flour, and used that for a face powder.
It was white.
Anyway, I remember a little bit that
She looked like she was whitewashed when she got through.
she was a real likable person.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody loved her.
And was a wonderful cook. We'd go down there and she'd fix the grandest meals. She'd have everything on her table. And when we had finished, you couldn't hold a bite of anything. She'd say, "Girls, could I fry you an egg before you leave the table?"
Well, you know, but I remember remember going to Uncle Vine and Aunt Cindy's once, and as I remember it, wherever they lived was over an awfully rocky road. I thought we were going to knock the bottom out of the car before we got there. Was that right?
Yes.
Well, tell us about some of those stories. You know about this one about
Charlie.
Yes.
Your dad and our boys would get him to talking, you know, about riding a horse and have him jump ditches.
The old horse was born.
And one day he called his ma and says, "Ma, throw me down a pair of drawers." And, of course, Aunt Cindy pitched down some underwear. And he picked it up and he says, "Oh, God burn, ma'am, such fuzzy drawers I never did see, with eyes so big and short and legs," and I don't know what all he did say. He was the silliest thing.
What happened? How many did they have?
Well, they had about 12 and about 3 that had good sense out of the 12.
Is that right?
And our mother used to take us up there, and Uncle Vine would say, "Mealy, I do know that you've got the meanest children." He said that to her one day. Meanest. Because we had a little life in us and could get around. And she said that they had the children under trees out in the yard in the summertime and flies eating their eyes out. Didn't have sense enough to get up to fight the flies off. And she says, "Well, Vine, I'd rather have them mean like mine than have them like yours, just strung out and letting the flies eat their eyes out."
Oh, my gosh. Well,
it was sad, really.
Uncle Vine and Aunt Cindy were of normal intelligence.
Oh, yes.
Well, they must have all carried genes for feeble-minded.
They surely did, because there was Annie and Henry and Bill and Charlie.
Well, one time when we went down there, I remember a girl kind of dancing through the room.
Annie, great big old slob. She'd play the organ and sing.
Well, she kind of danced around, as I remember.
And after she was married and divorced, she had a baby with this man. And Glenn Rickman came down here, and we were talking about someone, and he says, "Well, my goodness," says, "Andy's prouder of that bastard than I am my new car."
Well, did she have feeble-minded children?
No.
They were all
right.
Well, how in the world did she
I
raise
don't know.
I wonder.
Well, they got out as soon as they were big enough. The last time, who did she marry the first time?
She
married a young first and a Morris.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, listen, she had a baby by Uncle Vine's own brother.
Oh, she didn't either.
By her uncle?
That was Betty Wildman there. Wilder,
Well, was you mean her uncle fathered her own child?
Yes.
Well, what kind of shape was that one in?
Oh, terrible.
Crazy.
Died in,
Oh, my. How sad.
Oh, it was awful. And she was just a child.
Oh, she was and she told that he raised her in the barn.
Now, I'll hold this so we can get all this over here. Why, do you, of course I know both of you remember both sets of grandparents, the Longs and the Shorts. Well, what were the Longs like? I mean, personality-wise. Can you tell us a little bit about them?
Well, they were...
Now, they didn't have any silly children.
Well, not many did, really, did they? But Uncle Vine and that.
But I were about the only ones. But, well, the Shorts were more reserved than the Longs. We always just did what we wanted to, you know, and talk and carry on. But the Shorts thought that Paul got into the wrong set because we were too outspoken. And
Well, did they think that's about my grandparents,
I
too?
guess they did.
They must,
Sure.
Then what was your grandmother Long's maiden name?
Smith.
All right, and they came from Kentucky.
I can hear her say Whitney County, Kentucky.
Yeah.
Now, do you know what this grandmother Smith's name was before that?
No, I
You can't go
don't.
back farther than the
No, we
Smiths.
didn't have any records.
Do you know about your grandmother Short? She was a Coleman, but you don't know what her mother's name
No,
was.
I don't.
Of a lovely, she was of a lovely family.
They were more reserved than the Longs.
Yeah.
Well, I think
And
that
they
carries
came
over, though, in
from,
most of these...
Tennessee.
They came from
Yes,
Tennessee.
I knew that. Grandpat came from Roane County, didn't
Roane
he? That's
County
what
came
Uh-huh.
I
He
knew it
carried
took
an
me
axe on his shoulder and cut a path from Tennessee to Springfield.
What do you remember about Grandpat?
Well, he was coming here one time to visit us, and his horses had to run away. He was driving a wagon, and it overturned, and, he was hurt pretty bad. His head was cut all over, and we were having a revival meeting here at the little church next door, and Grandpap went. He was on crutches and his head bandaged, and at the close, or during the service, he shouted. I'd never heard anyone shout. And I thought, well, he'd gone crazy, you know. But he just shouted all over the church, and I was so embarrassed. I didn't
Were
know.
you?
Oh, I didn't know what...
As you grew up, though, it wouldn't have bothered you.
Oh, no, but I didn't know what he was doing. I didn't know
Ah.
people did like that.
I've heard Aunt Celie say that he and Granny Bell lived with her folks for a while.
Oh,
Must have
I
been
didn't
there.
know that.
Well, they did, because I've heard her say, you know, that he was pretty severe, that if she and Aunt Hattie would be doing work for their mother, and Grandpap would give an order, they quit whatever they were doing and did what Grandpap commanded. But he and Granny Bell lived with a while. Didn't you understand that, Mother?
Well, now,
And-
her name was Farmer, and
Yes.
she had a brother that lived with them, I know.
Yeah.
Well, and I don't know, I remember, though, Aunt Celie telling that, and I don't know how long they were there, except that she just said that Grandpap, even though he was living in his son and daughter-in-law's house, still called the shots, and he
yes.
expected, you know, to...
I'll bet. He was that way. He'd boss us when he'd come.
Oh, he did.
Oh, yes. He was very demanding,
But
and thought we ought to be just so about everything.
but in the Longs, you say, were
Oh,
a lot
no.
freer and more relaxed.
Oh, yes. Poor old Granny Long. I know she was here one time, and she didn't care much for Dewey or Lucy. And she was on to Lucy about something, and she says, well, Granny, why in the world don't you go to McDowell and visit Aunt Pop and Uncle George? You think we're so bad. She says, well, honey, I would, but says it isn't healthy down on old flat.
Wasn't healthy down there.
This is
Dr. Henson. And you remember the Saul Hembrys over here across the river. He fell out of a grapevine, and they called Dr. Henson over there, and when he got there, why, he examined this man real good, and he says, have you had a bowel movement? And he was kind of timid, and his woman spoke up and says yes. And he says, well, how much, was it a pretty good one? She says, well, I'll tell you, Doc. Says, it was a good one. Says, it was about like this, but broke in two in the middle. But says, I really think he did that when he fell out of the vine. Now, that's the truth.
What about that one about Doc Youngmo, about the fellow that came in his office?
Well, I can't remember it. Only he came into the brought his wife to the doctor. And Dr. Young says, what's wrong with you today? And he said, well, it isn't me, it's my wife. And he said, well, what's the symptom? Says, what's wrong with her? He says, well, I'm just afraid she's been bitten by one of them old trouser birds.
Well, there.
Oh, down in Texas.
Down in Texas, Lena was telling this, one of her students told her, and it was so cute. said that he came in and said that they were in a bar, and some little dude came riding a pony up and tied him to the hitching post and went in and got him a drink, and there's a big crowd of fellas in there, and said he went out to get his horse and get on. He came back in, and he was so mad. He says, I want to know what son of a bitch painted old Blue's balls pink. And said this great big Texan stood up, and he says, well, I'm the one. What did you want to do about it? He said, well, I just wondered if it's dry enough to give the second coat.
This was recorded in Bess and Fan's house in Galena in May of 1973, and my mother, Eule Short, was heard along with Bess and Fan.